ClarkWoods.com. This is Horribly Off Topic, episode number 239. I'm Chris.
I'm Steve.
I'm turning myself down just a little bit. In the test, I was a little too low.
But now you're talking louder, so I think that's the problem.
Okay. I'm speaking the English.
You do not have to put that much emphasis
on that syllable.
No, on any word or phrase, Chris. We have microphones. They amplify the sound that we're... So, like, you know, if you're going to yell, back off.
Back up off it.
Right.
Yeah, that's what Snoop Dogg says. He had to back up off it. He had to put that cup of gin down. Tanqueray and Chronic. I'm fucked up now.
I mean,
I believe that's how it goes.
When aren't you, Chris?
Well, you know,
you're always just blazing and
blazing in my saddle. Have you seen that movie, Blazing Saddles?
Yes, Chris. I've seen a movie that's over 40 years old at this point.
I mean, I haven't seen it, which is why I ask. Is it good?
How have you never seen it with like your dad? Like
I don't know.
Like that is a straight up your dad kind of movie.
I don't know. I think a lot of these movies got played when I was in the other room doing something else. I
mean, no, not Lefty, but you know.
Steve, for those of you not in the room, was making
You mean everyone else?
making a masturbatory gesture.
Yeah.
Implying that I was jerking off while everyone was watching Blazing Saddles. But I'm pretty sure that if Blazing Saddles was watched in our house, it was watched when I was younger and not yet jacking it, as they say.
Okay. Well, I mean...
I feel like I've seen parts of it, but I could not tell you what happens in the movie. I know that it's racist, right?
It's not... I mean, it deals with racial tensions from the time.
Okay.
But it does it in a Mel Brooks fun way.
Got it. Okay.
Although, you know, I don't think they could make that movie today.
Oh, that's okay. That's what I remember. That is the thing that's come up in the zeitgeist lately, is that they couldn't make that today. That's what and also what I've heard you say before. They couldn't make it today.
Yeah, I mean, they could try, but I just don't think like Twitter will be okay with it.
Do you think?
I don't understand, like, you know, I don't often see people like chiding Blazing Saddles for being the worst movie ever.
Right.
Just because, I mean, it deals with the racism. Mm-hmm. It does say bad words.
Right.
But, you know, I don't know. Richard Pryor was one of the people that like helped write it. I mean, He was supposed to be in it, but then like there was the whole thing.
Okay. So let me ask you, I don't know if you even would know the answer, so I might have to start typing here in a second. When was the last time Mel Brooks put out a movie? And so the bigger question is, could Mel Brooks put out a movie today, or are we past the point at which Mel Brooks' sense of humor is palatable to the general public?
No, I think it's still palatable. I mean, people like he did the producers on Broadway, and isn't that still a thing?
I don't know if it's still on there, but I do know that that might be the last movie he did, when they did the musical the film adaptation of the musical.
Right.
They were going to do a Spaceballs sequel at some point recently, I think.
Were they?
I think. I mean, I think it was getting batted around. I don't know.
Well, Rick Moranis is like one of those people that doesn't want to do things anymore. Like, so like if they're gonna do it, they can't do it without him. Like,
that's true.
I'm sorry. Like, if you don't have Lord Helmet, you do not have a Spaceballs 2.
Yeah, that's fair. The last film he was credited with directing was Dracula Dead and Loving It,
which was horrible.
Yeah, Robin Hood Men in Tights was before that, which I have some. I was gonna say fond. I don't know if it's fond.
It's okay.
Yeah.
It is very 1993.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Spaceballs is where it's at for me. Like that kind of was it, you know, because I was a Star Wars fan. That was the one that grabbed me, and for the most part, I never had to watch any other. I never did watch any other Mel Brooks movies as I look through these. I'm pretty sure I've never seen any of the rest of them all the way through.
I don't know that.
I mean,
that is very curious to me. Like I just see it odd, like, you know, because like when let's just say Clerks came out, you were fond of Kevin Smith, correct?
Not initially, but yeah, pretty soon thereafter. By around Chasing Amy time was when I became fond of Kevin Smith, and then I worked backwards.
Okay, so you watched Chasing Amy, and then you're like, I'm going to watch the other things this guy has done.
Well, so but I had been over to my friend Ken's house prior to Chasing Amy, and we were going to do a back-to-back of...
Ken Masters?
No. Try again. No. No.
Ken Masters is the full name of Ken from Street Fighter.
Oh, which you were playing a little bit of the Street Fighter.
I was playing Street Fighter 4 right before we started the show. I was just kind of playing my PlayStation 3.
Playing Ken.
I was playing Dan.
Dan. I always get those guys mixed up.
Well, there's Ken and Ryu, who are like the rivals and the characters that a lot of people pick in the original Street Fighter. Well, original Street Fighter, I think it was just Ryu, but then in Street Fighter 2 it was Ken and Ryu, which basically were kind of, I mean, almost exactly the same as far as like their moveset, but like once things got developed in Street Fighter 2, like it was slightly different.
I think those two are in Wreck-It Ralph.
What, Ken and Ryu?
Yeah, pretty sure.
But then, SNK, Street Fighter was made by Capcom.
Okay.
And SNK made a fighting game. I think it was King of Fighters. And those video game experts that are listening, please feel free to send us an email, hot@clarkwoods.com, if I am incorrect in saying it was King of Fighters. But I think it was King of Fighters that particular year.
Yeah.
They created a character called Ryo, which was basically making fun of Ken and Ryu.
Oh.
But then Capcom, in stride, makes Dan a character who's making fun of Ryu, who is a character making fun of them in the first place.
I love the levels there. I really do. Yeah. No, my friend was not Ken Masters. My friend was Ken M. I'll leave it at that. Not Masters.
Okay. Were you nervous because I said something that began with an M?
No, not nervous. In fact, he probably wouldn't even...
bat an eyelash?
Bat an eyelash if I actually mentioned his full name.
Yeah, I think I've mentioned full names of people before, and we didn't beep it, and the world didn't blow up.
That's kind of the way the world...
Like Jim Norton used to talk about like crimes that he committed when he was a kid on Opie and Anthony back in the day, and like he would like fully name people. So
okay. Maybe he cut a deal with the FBI. He's like, you know what? You go on the show. You talk about your crimes. You will not get prosecuted.
Crimes.
No. So my friend Ken invited us over, and we watched back-to-back Clerks and Mallrats. And as I recall, I fell asleep during Clerks. I think we watched Mallrats first. Ken was weird.
Reverse chronological order.
Chronological order, I think. Yeah. I was a fan of Kevin Smith. You were saying about Mel Brooks.
I was trying to kind of like say, okay, you watched Chasing Amy, you watched like the previous films of his catalog, and I don't imagine you just watched it that one time that you fell asleep while watching Clerks.
No.
You actually watched Clerks.
I did. I became quite a student of those first three films.
So yeah, I mean, it's just odd to me that you would do that with that particular director, but wouldn't with another one.
Well, I mean, I encountered Mel Brooks when I was way younger.
Okay, so you never like stumbled across Spaceballs again, and then as a sort of adult, a teenager or whatever, and we're like, oh yeah, this movie. What else has this guy done?
I think I've returned to it since and found it not nearly as funny as I remember.
I still love Spaceballs. Yeah. Like I think there was like a lull in like how funny I thought it was. Like maybe when I was an early teen, but like by the end, by the time I was graduating high school, I'm like, I'm back in.
Yeah.
I'm back in on the Spaceballs train. Because it just became iconic for me. Because I remember watching, there was like a pay-per-view channel that if you didn't order a pay-per-view, it would just play like
Okay.
clips of whatever movie from the time. And I remember when Spaceballs had just come to pay-per-view,
Right.
it like played the scene where like Mel Brooks as Scroob is like inhaling the Perry air in his office.
Yeah.
And then I don't know.
It's so. I mean, and I'm not saying it. I'm not saying that I find it unfunny. I'm saying that as a kid, I think I thought it was so funny that revisiting it as even a quasi-adult, whenever it was that I watched it last, was just bound to be disappointing because I built it up in my memory. It wasn't something that I owned on VHS. I never owned the DVDs, so I must have just like one month when I happened to have HBO or something, or I don't know, somehow, or it was on Netflix or God knows what, when I finally watched it again. And it it couldn't possibly have been as good as I remembered it because I thought it was, I owned the novelization.
There was a book. Why do people write books?
Why do people just end there? Why do people write books?
Like
no
one reads anymore. It's like so fucking pointless.
I spent the whole first half of my day writing a book, but I don't know why I did it.
Pointless, Chris. You should just get that PlayStation 4, get Spider-Man, and just do that with your rec time.
Yeah, I should give up and just.
I mean, you know, just take a break after this next one and see, you know, and then just promote those three. And then once you get a nice following, like, you like Mel Brooks, right? People people watch one of his movies. Why would they go and watch other ones of their movies?
But I did own the novelization. I think do I still have it? I had it for a very long time.
I did not know that they wrote a book.
They sold it at the book fair, like the Scholastic Book Fair had it. That's how I got it.
The Spaceballs novelization. This is weird because I think
maybe junior novelization. They wouldn't call it a junior novelization. I don't know. Maybe they would. It's
like when Mel Brooks was first starting to write it. I think he talked to George Lucas.
Yeah.
And George Lucas was fine with the parody being made, but he didn't want them to like make any products or make any
merchandise,
which is part of the movie,
right?
Like where the real money from the film is made.
Yes,
we got Spaceballs, the flamethrower.
The kids loved this one. Yeah, it's a good flick. Pizza the Hut, I remember being one of my favorite things.
You're delicious
in the movie because I loved pepperoni pizza.
And after watching that like festering mess, like I kind of wanted pizza less.
I didn't. In fact,
I don't understand like the just melty, cheesy, blobby, disgusting shit. And you're like, ooh, pizza.
It makes me hungry just thinking about it.
I mean, I do love pizza, and that's something that we have the cauliflower crusts, and Becky occasionally will make the fathead dough crusts, which is, in my opinion, leaps and bounds over the cauliflower. She disagrees because she has to make it.
What's in the fathead crust?
It's just almond flour and some other shit, like instead of like what you would use normal flour and make a pizza dough.
Okay, yeah. So the cauliflower crust is pre-made, or
we buy it at and we have it in the freezer. And
got it. So there's a lot more labor involved in the other one. Right. I can understand,
and I can taste the love. I guess.
Isn't it great when you can taste the love? That's a thing in. Is it like Water for Chocolate? Is that where that's at? I feel like I've read books where that's a theme.
That was
somebody makes food and there's magic and love that's in the food.
That was one of the many titles that Viz co-opted for the Ranma video series.
Oh, it was like Water for Chocolate?
It was like Water for Ranma was the episode, or was the title of that particular VHS. Should go to my dad's house and dig all those out. I did go there. Shit, it was probably about a year ago now.
Yeah.
Or maybe less. I think might have been before the wedding.
Right.
but it was definitely not too hot or anything. So I was just over there, and I was just going through my closet of like stuff that was in there, and I just grabbed it because my dad was like you got all this stuff here. You want to go through it? I'm like, just throw it out.
They don't want to hear that. I mean, I'm not saying that all dads are like your dad and my dad, but I just think generally speaking, they don't want to hear just throw it.
So I was required to go over there, get a big old, like, he handed me a big old trash bag, and I was just literally throwing most things in there. Like, I didn't throw out like my Ranma tapes or whatever else, but like there was a lot of stuff. Like I had like notes and like notebooks and shit from like high school. And I'm like, well, I don't fucking need this. When am I gonna go back to like I probably wasn't that, but see, when am I gonna go back and look at my notes from like senior year English class?
When you have that nightmare and you realize that there was a class that you failed and you have to go back to high school.
Like, I'm gonna Billy Madison.
Have you ever actually had that nightmare? It's like apparently one of the most common dreams or nightmares out there. I haven't had it in a long time, but you suddenly you're the age you are now, so usually it's in your 20s, and you maybe your early 30s, and you are suddenly forced to go back to high school because whatever, it's dream logic. You are 20 something, you have to go back to high school, and
you're in your underpants. Luckily they're MeUndies, which are 3 times softer than cotton. I got some new ones with cassette tapes on it.
Do we have?
Why don't you guys sponsor us?
Do we have a code?
Code HOT. Try that one out, and they'll be like, "That's not a code."
Have you ever heard of this dream?
No, I've never. I might have had this dream when I was younger, but I don't remember.
Yeah, well,
it makes sense. Like, this is like slightly post graduation kind of dream.
Yeah. And
then you wake up, you're like, "Oh no, I'm a graduate."
Yeah, no, but I think the really frightening part of it is when you're way past graduation. Like, so maybe even past college graduation, but somehow if you don't finish that class in high school, the world is going to end. Like, the consequences are very vague too. It's just like, I missed this class, I have to go back, and I have to be in high school again or else. And it's just it was so, I had that dream a lot, and it was so stressful.
Like, but when you were younger, or like more recently, or whatever?
Not more recently, but I would say in my 20s, I had that dream a lot.
All right. Well, I think that might be a specific Chris dream.
It's not. You could look it up.
I don't particularly want to, and please don't right now.
All right. I got to resist putting my fingers on the keys.
Like, how was senior year for you? Like, as far as high school goes?
It's funny. I was just talking about that in therapy yesterday.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, this is Chris's Therapy Corner. I'm coming up with a new song for it.
Yeah, because we might get sued by Pearl Jam if we continue to do the
because fucking
fair use,
and it fucking, like, Weird Al asks for permission to do parodies. He does not need to do that. You can make a parody of a song whenever you fucking want. Like, listen to any fucking Morning Zoo. They do like the worst shitty parodies of all time.
They do. So I could say therapy spoken by Chris.
Yes, and Pearl Jam is not going to sue us.
We were talking specifically about the first.
I mean, if we were doing it at an arcade bar and called it by a certain thing, maybe.
If we were doing it at an arcade bar where we served our world famous Bark-Aid.
Yes.
Okay.
Make sure you put more of a space in between next time.
No, so we were talking in therapy. It was more about the last 4 or so months of 1994, so the beginning of my senior year. But just on the whole, senior year was okay. I remember, and I still keep meaning to do this. I had this realization at a cookout a couple weekends ago, and then meant to go home and look for my high school transcripts, and then didn't. I dropped a hell of a lot of classes my senior year, and I cannot for the life of me remember what I actually took. Because I remember dropping math almost immediately. I remember dropping science. I remember dropping out of AP history. What did I take?
I don't know. If you dropped all those courses, you had to take English.
Yes. And
English was the only class you had to take all 4 years. Mm-hmm. I remember
I'm pretty sure I wasn't taking a foreign language still at that point.
I dropped Latin 2 because I didn't feel like taking Latin anymore, and then that gave me my second period free period, which allowed me to copy Garen's homework.
Okay.
Which was great because, like, you know, it was pre-calc, and I've never had a very great math mind,
Right?
And so, you know, I would copy his homework, and it was funny. I think the teacher just liked me more, and we had it 2 separate periods. It was the same class, same professor or same teacher, but different. He had a 5th period, I had like 6th or something like that,
Right?
And. Actually, no, I think I had it first. No, he had it first.
Yeah.
So he would hand in his homework. Well, like he wouldn't hand it in, but he would just go around to make sure people fucking did it and give you a check plus, check minus, or check if you had done it.
Right.
And if you showed your work, you'd probably get a check or a check plus. If you just did next to nothing but did it, you'd get a check minus. And if you didn't do it, you would get nothing and like it.
Okay.
I would typically get a check or a check plus. Garen would typically get a check or a check minus
for the
same homework.
Poor Garen.
Yep.
Oh man.
At a certain point, I thought he was going to stop letting me copy his homework, but
just out of frustration.
Yeah. What the fuck?
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember senior year being like, besides Latin, which is what I dropped, like the only one class that I dropped. And I took physics because I didn't take chemistry the year before.
Did I stick with physics? I don't know. I just remember there was a bunch of stuff that I dropped, and it was...
But you still had enough credits to graduate, obviously.
Yeah, I mean, well, or maybe I didn't. Maybe that's why I had the nightmare.
Yeah, maybe
I'm going to have the nightmare tonight.
You probably will, because you fucking dropped all your classes, but they were like, fuck, we need this kid out of here.
Yeah,
Let's just let him go.
I would not want me there.
Yeah, I mean, you are like a 40-something. We don't want you creeping around teenagers.
I did go back a fair bit until finally somebody was like, so like my freshman year of college, I was back at the high school a whole bunch. Maybe even into the beginning of sophomore year of college, and somebody was finally like, you need to stop coming around. And I did. But it's most of my friends.
They were like, was it Tom Petty that told you?
Don't come around here no more?
Yeah. You could have not said that.
I could have.
And then people would have gathered it.
But I wouldn't be me.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Funnily enough, in my fiction, one of the pieces of feedback I got from one of my readers on this most recent
is that you're too subtle?
Yes.
Really? Mm-hmm. And like you just have to just focus your podcast self while you're writing.
Oh, God.
And just be like, well, I should explain every joke.
And then vice versa. I should channel a little bit of my writing self here on the show
and be like, oh, Steve just made a joke that we'll let people get.
Yeah.
And if they don't get it, then shame on them. And not like, here's this brush, let me paint all the pictures with all the brushes.
All the pictures with all the brushes. Do you ever paint?
I guess in high school.
Yeah.
But that was about
it. I never got
acrylic, not oil.
I don't know that I ever did paint. I on any sort of regular basis. I like never got to that point. I was all about the pens and pencils. And
I mean, we did take
chalk.
Talking of classes that I dropped, like the AP Art that I think was sophomore year, which was I think your senior year.
Yep.
Did you stay in that class? Because I dropped it.
So that might be. Did I?
Or was that? No, that was definitely sophomore because I was in like a regular art class freshman year.
Well, so I took an art class, I'm pretty sure, and a graphic design class. I feel like were those two separate things? I don't know. And then
that was one of those places like that class was one of the when I realized I wasn't good at art. I was like, oh, I can doodle, but I'm not. I am just like slightly below the level of somebody who's good.
Yeah. But where I thought you were going with that is that classroom and also kind of that whole hallway at the high school, because further down that hallway was the chorus room and the sort of chorus music theater hallway, that whole corridor, if I'm remembering correctly, you could kind of just hang out there. Like I think because the computer lab was bigger and it was the arts computer lab.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I took. I think computer graphics. That's where the name for the new Sweethearts came.
Oh.
That was Paul and I in our computer graphics class. We were making like a calendar, and he made his calendar, and he called it Sweethearts because Will and I had been calling each other Sweetheart a lot.
Right.
And then he revised it and called it the New Sweethearts. And I said, that's a funny name for a band.
Naming conventions. I could geek out about naming conventions and how bad I am at them, but I won't.
Did we get any emails about a good title for your book?
We did not.
Oh,
No.
well,
Yeah,
fucking email at hot@clarkwoods.com.
Yeah.
Help Chris out. He needs you.
I've been taking notes the whole week, trying to come up with titles based on songs I've been listening to or just random turns of phrase, and nothing yet. So when I was writing this morning, I came to a point where I actually like sort of made the title part of the story. There's a movie within that. There's a short film within the book that's described, and it has the same title that the book was going to have. And I was just like, nope, that has to go. And that was fine. I just cut that whole part and probably saved some words. So that's, save some people some time. People don't like to read.
Yeah, definitely not me. Like, yeah. I mean, I was thinking that if I ever catch up on my podcast, which I am chronically 2 months behind.
Yeah.
I might want to try to listen to The Wheel of Time again.
Oh, well, audiobooks. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah. So
it's just reading is not something I can do. Like I can read comics, that's fine.
Yeah.
Like a chapter or two of One Piece before bed or whatever, when the new chapter comes out. But that's about it for me as far as reading goes.
You're not alone in that. There's a high school classmate of mine who I met. We've talked about this. I feel like I've said this before. And
it's fine. We've done 239 episodes. It's a good chance that the people listening now either don't remember you saying this, because I don't, and or have never heard you say this.
Yeah. So there's a high school classmate of mine who I met again for the first time in 20-something years at my high school reunion. It was not the person who called me the hottest guy in the room. And she was like, well, when your book comes out on audio, let me know and I'll listen to it. But she basically kind of in the same place as you. She does not read text, but I think listening to an audiobook is a form of reading.
Yeah, it is. It is listen reading.
I mean, they say
someone's reading it. It's just not me.
Yes, and kids get benefit. And even when they're young, get credit for having their parents read to them. So I don't know that we get this anymore.
Credit?
So Melody and Kaylee, most of their lives, Kaylee not as much anymore, have had reading logs as long as they've been in school. And early on, you could count.
Is that when you read on the toilet?
Yes, that is the log that you produce while you are,
there you go, Chris.
I tried to stop myself.
You didn't.
So they would have these reading logs, and early on, like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, we were told that if we read to them, that could count as their reading for the night, because the kids really do see some benefit from it. So I would say,
well, if they're sitting with you and reading along with you, I think that's fine. But if if you're just reading the book at them, I think that's not as productive.
Yeah. Well, I always make it kind of an interactive, performative experience, and so
like the guy that reads the Harry Potter novels and does all the voices.
Oh, I'm just like Jim Dale. I'm so on that level. No, but I'm glad that nobody's ever recorded me doing it, because I wouldn't say that it's certainly not racist. Maybe bigoted? I don't know. My default when I'm reading a let's say The Sneetches and Other Stories by Dr. Seuss.
You just do Jewish voices.
No, because I don't think I could do a Jewish voice if I tried.
You did it earlier.
Did I?
Yeah, when we were talking Mel Brooks.
I was just trying to do Mel Brooks. I'd like, okay, so if I try to imagine Mel Brooks, I suppose I could do a
Well, it's just that, Dr. Seuss, or what is it?
Theodore Seuss Geisel.
Yes, he was Jewish.
Yeah. Yes. So,
Which is why he was so, unsurprisingly, against the Nazis.
unsurprisingly.
I don't know if there's a good chance if you're Jewish, you don't like Nazis.
It's a pretty good chance.
I don't want to have to speak out of turn, but
no.
if you're Jewish, Nazis are kind of shitty.
Yeah.
And for us, well, actually, I can only speak for myself.
Yeah.
I also think Nazis are pieces of shit.
Yes, Nazis, neo-Nazis, neo-Nazis. Any kind of Nazi, piece of shit.
Yeah, new or old.
New or old, or to come. No, so I'm reading Dr. Seuss's The Sneetches and Other Stories. Are you familiar with this book?
The one with star-bellied Sneetches.
Yes. So the cartoon version featured it was a special that was the Sneetches and the Zacks from that one book, and then they paired it with Green Eggs and Ham.
Ooh.
So that was the special. So if you remember as a kid watching the Sneetches as a cartoon, it would have been on that special.
I think I did remember watching that. I think that was something that was... It's weird what you remember. I remember watching it at my grandmother's house, because they had the Disney Channel and back when I was younger, but we didn't. So like when I was over there and had the opportunity, I would try to watch a little Disney Channel.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, so if you...
I also remember watching the All-Star Laugh Olympics there.
Oh, I don't really have a story about that, but
for you youngins out there was this this animation company, Hanna-Barbera.
Yes.
They made a bunch of different kind of cartoons. They had like Yogi Bear and like Snagglepuss and then they had Scooby Doo.
Dippity Dog? No.
Deputy Dog, I think was a thing.
Okay, yeah.
And then like Heckle and Jekyll, I think maybe. I don't know. Fucking a bunch of other. No, Heckle and Jekyll was like the same animation studio as Tom and Jerry.
Laugh
Olympics.
So
yeah, they had like this, like the Scooby Doo and the Jabberjaw and the fucking that kind of cartoon as well. And so like there was like, and then like. So there was those two groups. It was like the Yogi Bears and then
the Yogi Yahooies.
Yogi Yahooies. What was the Scooby one?
The Scooby Doobies.
And then there was like the baddies.
They're really rotten.
Okay, yeah. And so it was all the bad guys from like it wasn't, just like a bunch of people wearing masks from Scooby Doo. It was like, like Dick Dastardly and Muttley and some other shit.
Oh, Grape Ape was in there.
Yeah, Grape Ape.
Okay, and what was the name of the panther who was pink? It wasn't the Pink Panther.
Snagglepuss, I said it.
Snagglepuss. Okay, that's right. All right. Well, I'm looking at this very pixelated picture, and so I can make out certain characters who I know, and okay. All right. Yeah. Oh, Captain Caveman. Captain Caveman was on the Scooby Doobies.
Yeah.
And Hong Kong Phooey.
It's fanrific.
Yeah. My story about that, I hadn't thought about it in years when I bought and watched obsessively the VHS tape, the Real World Reunion.
Were they watching the All-Star Laugh Olympics?
No. Well, at the time, the Real World Reunion, I think, was filmed after the third season, while the fourth season was on the air, or some damn thing, or while the fourth season was in post-production. And one of the characters, one of the people on the Real World, was the then unknown comics writer Judd Winnick, who's a big shot at, or I don't know if he still is, but became a big shot at DC Comics.
And that comics studio.
Yeah. And so Judd.
Do they still make comics?
They do. They make shitty movies of their comics too.
One of the people I am friends with on Facebook that I went to college with, he is a fan of DC Comics, and he will post things every once in a while. And I will do the opposite of what most people do on Facebook, is not give him shit for it. That
is very nice of you. When you have a friend who is a fan of the obviously inferior comics company, DC. It's very nice of you to maybe
to
not
just let
call
him
them
enjoy
out.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think he listens to this, so it's not gonna
Yeah.
he's gonna stumble upon it and be like, oh, unless maybe we actually promote it on social media.
I'm worried. I want Mondays, as long as we're out on time, to be. I was working on my social media strategy, as it were, as if I really have one. And I was like, Mondays are for the show.
Mine's never post anything,
Yeah.
except for when you post stuff, and then I'll just retweet it or
Right.
repost it. Or if you've already tagged me, then I don't have to do anything.
Yeah. What were we talking about?
You were talking about the Sneetches, and then we talked.
Sneetches,
Then we got horribly off topic.
We did get horribly off topic, but there was something in the horribly off topic that I wanted to wrap up, and I don't remember what it was. We talked about Sneetches. We got to Laugh Olympics.
Right.
Real World.
Right.
Judd Winnick, DC Comics. That's where we got off. Okay. So Judd Winnick, in introducing the idea of the Real World reunion, compares it to the Laugh Olympics.
Which then, like, didn't MTV do like Road Rules?
They did eventually
versus Real World.
So they looked at Judd Winnick, said that thing, and then they're like, "Let's make a show out of it."
Yeah, let's do the All Star. Who are the really rottens in that?
It depends on your perspective. If you were a Real World fan, then it would have been the Road Rules people.
No, there should have been a third. Like,
Oh, there should have been.
Yeah, I mean, like, what was another show, like another reality show on MTV at the time?
Those were the two. I mean, and so those are the.
Or maybe it could have been another reality show, like oh, what else was on back then? That was reality TV.
They could have been two guys dressed up as Beavis and Butthead. And here's something else I want to say, and this is maybe a controversial opinion.
Good.
I loved The Real World. That's not the controversial part.
I mean,
never watched the Road Rules, but I did watch the challenge. But here's what I'm here to say: I really love the.
You love Fruity Pebbles. You love Fruity Pebbles in a major way.
Love Fruity Pebbles in a major way. No.
Bonnie, my pebbles. Hey, friend.
He does these impressions. No, so I really like The Real World was especially the third season was
that the Puck season?
That was the Puck and Pedro
and peanut butter.
Yes, and Pedro was the gay man who had AIDS, and it was a very sort of informative show for me. But what I will say is that if I could go back in time and make the Real World and Road Rules never happen, and that would prevent all of reality television, then I would do it 100 times out of 100.
Yeah, I mean, because then we don't have a thing called the Celebrity Apprentice.
Well, that I didn't even think about that. I was thinking more about Survivor. And here's why I was thinking more about Survivor. So you were mentioning being behind on your podcasts. Survivor is eventually the reason why I have no podcast app on my phone anymore. Because the one podcast that I listen to without fail every week eventually became just the three of them who discovered Survivor late, riffing about Survivor for 90 minutes. And then continuing that into their bonus episode on their Patreon that I paid for. And finally, I was like, I don't care. Survivor is stupid. And I don't care, and I don't want to hear about it anymore. I really enjoyed that show, and I'm sad that I had to give it up.
That's one of those shows that I'm surprised is still on. We were talking at work, like a couple of my coworkers, like watching The Bachelor or The Bachelorette or whatever, and I'm like, huh, that show's still on. But like, it does what reality shows do and have like inane drama, and there we go.
Apparently, there's whole strategies around it. There's the gambling piece around Survivor. I did not know this, but when you listen to a podcast that has devolved into a Survivor worship
let's
show,
not do the same.
Yeah, no. So I would very much like to make reality TV never have happened.
Yeah, I mean it's basically like documentary filmmaking without the effort.
I guess, yeah.
Without a message. You're just like, I mean, like back when they first started the Real World, I think they actually did put effort into it. They just filmed them, and then they found the things that were good. They had to watch a lot of material, but now I think with there's not a Real World anymore, right?
There might be, but I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, closer to the end of its life cycle, I imagine it was just like, all right, we're gonna send you to this fucking nightclub. Go there. We're gonna film the nightclub, and that'll be the fucking episode. Like I think they call it in the biz assisted reality.
Yeah,
because it's just like we're gonna put these people in situations where like crazy controversy could happen, or like we're gonna feed them tons of liquor, so they either hook up or they fucking get in fights. Like
they fuck and get in fights.
Fuck while getting in a fight.
They fight, and that causes them to
somebody fuck. Just like banging doggy style, and he's just punching left and right,
just like a dog.
Yeah, I mean that's how dogs fuck. They put little boxing gloves on their paws. And they're like, and someone's like, "Dear dog, how do you type with boxing gloves on your hands?" And he's like, "Ruff, ruff, ruff." That was just a fucking amalgam of just a mess of things.
Yeah, no, a dog with boxing gloves on his hands.
Paws on his little paws.
But I think you said hands. That's why I
said hands. All right, okay.
What were we talking? So we rounded out the Real World thing and the Laugh Olympics. Going back
Sneeches.
Up the stack. Sneeches. Okay, Sneeches.
I tried to get us back there before, but you were like, I needed to talk about fucking Real World.
We needed to wrap that up. It was very important to me. You never know when I might get run over by a truck, and I need to wrap up everything. We talked about this in therapy too.
Getting run over by a truck?
Well, about my overwhelming fear of death and mortality. So, how that drives every decision that I make.
You know what, Chris? We've done
don't get me too far because I don't want to have a panic attack.
239 episodes of this exist.
Yeah.
So you'll never die.
All right, so the Sneeches. When I'm reading the Sneeches, there are the star-bellied Sneeches and the Sneeches without stars, right? And to distinguish them to my children, I will adopt two different voices. And the two default voices I have are bad British accent and bad Southern accent. And so,
which one's the Southern accent? The stars or the stars out without?
The sans stars are the Southern accent.
Well, looky here, I got no star on my belly.
Exactly.
Cool, blimey! Yeah. I've got a star on my stomach.
Yes, and then they get to say thing because it happened by accident the first time, but then I realized I got to use certain words that I know from my bad British accent. There's a point at which the Sneeches with stars sound like Michael Caine. Because
do you do the Michael Caine?
No, it's not. It's not. Well, they sound like Michael Caine in my head, and what comes out is something like "I never." Oh wait, wrong story. That's the Zacks. The Zacks. So let me go back. So in the Zacks, what happens is that the north-going Zacks, who I think speaks for, it's always who speaks first. The north-going Zacks is the British voice, and the south-going Zacks is the
southerner.
Is the southerner.
Well, that makes sense.
But it doesn't make sense because the north-going Zacks is coming from the south, and the south-going Zacks is coming from the north.
Well, I mean, are they from there, or are they just heading in that direction?
I don't know. They just always go that way, right? And of course they won't budge. They won't. Neither one of them will move, and that's the story of the Zacks.
Just like the South Bird, it's always facing south.
Yes, and so I read those, and the one voice that's different in the Sneeches is the voice of Sylvester McMonkey McBean. And what I did not realize until...
It's been a long time since I've read a Dr. Seuss book.
I could pretty much recite that entire book to you.
It's okay if you don't.
Sure? Yeah, I could start.
Oh, no, that's fine, Chris.
Now the Starbelly Sneak.
If we get a Patreon, and that's... and like... if you put it on the highest tier,
Right.
that's something you do, that means people want it, and then we'll just do that.
Okay. All right. I like where this is going. So Sylvester McMonkey McBean has a distinct voice, neither British nor Southern, and he sounds in my head. I don't know how he sounds when he actually comes out, but in my head, he sounds a little bit like Walter Cronkite. He's
Kind of
got
like
at
that.
least got the cadence of Walter Cronkite, where he pauses on very specific words.
Do you put you have a mustache, but do you put like a comb in front of your face when you're like, I'm Walter Cronkite?
And at any rate, so I was doing this, and it had been years since I'd seen the cartoon. And then we managed to find a copy of the cartoon. This is after Kaylee had gotten a little older, and she's heard it a whole bunch, heard me do it a whole bunch. And we watch it, and my Sylvester McMonkey McBean is a very bad approximation of the Sylvester McMonkey McBean from the TV show.
Was it Walter Cronkite that did it?
It was not, but it's the cadence is right, where there's like more of a pause. It's sort of like, it's not even Walter Cronkite. Who the fuck is it? The cadence reminds me of Walter Cronkite, but the actual voice is someone else. And I won't do it because if people want it, they're going to have to join our non-existent Patreon.
Yeah, well, you gotta make the Patreon first, Chris.
At any rate, then there's no accents in Too Many Daves, which is the third story in that book.
Too many Daves?
Too Many Daves. Well, so the book is different from the movie. The movie just had the three stories. It had I think Sneetch's was first, then Zach's was kind of the palate cleanser because it's short, and then it goes into Green Eggs and Ham.
All the like Dr. Seuss books that I've had have been single books, like the one thing. Like I don't know what this one you have that has 3 in it.
Well, so Sneetch, all of those are short. Sneetch's is longer.
Every fucking Dr. Seuss.
No. Sneetch's is like short by Dr. Seuss standards.
Okay.
Like it's a short. It's a short book.
Oh, the places you'll go.
Yeah, and he has a couple like that. So there's Yertle the Turtle and other stories. There's the Sneetches and other stories. And I feel like there might be one other one that's well known that's something and other stories. But then most of them, are Thidwick the Moose and the Two Hortons, which I have interesting thoughts about. They're not.
Is it different between that and Horton Hears a Who?
Well, yeah. What I'm saying is, there's Horton Hears a Who, and there's Horton. Horton Hatches the Egg, right? So there's 2 different Horton books, and
do they have like a chronology?
At some point, I'm going to write a dissertation on the chronology of no. I think it's very interesting to ponder whether or not Horton hatches the egg before he hears the Who's or after he hears the Who's. I would wager to say that though I think Horton Hatches the Egg was published before Horton Hears the Who, I might be wrong about that, that Horton Hatches the Egg happens after. Because the way the other animals in the jungle treat Horton is more like, oh, that Horton, instead of like the hate that he gets in Horton Hears a Who. So Horton Hatches the Egg is more like, that Horton, he's always up to something weird. Why is he sitting on a bird's nest? It's not like tie him to a cross.
Did they tie him to a cross?
No, I'm comparing Horton to Jesus.
I mean, there are similarities. They're both elephants.
That reminds me, going back to Kevin Smith, of Dogma, where Matt Damon's character is trying to convince the nun through the use of the walrus and the carpenter by Lewis Carroll that God doesn't exist. And he mentions the walrus, not an elephant, but has tusks.
And then Kevin Smith made Tusk many years later.
He did.
Everyone's favorite movie.
I still haven't seen that one.
It's better than Yoga Hosers.
I can believe that. I wonder if he's ever going to finish anything again. I feel like he sets up all of these things that he's going to do and then doesn't do them.
You know what? Who cares? Like,
Yeah.
Is he enjoying himself? Is he like having fun doing his reality show where it's his comic book shop? Does he like smoking pot?
I guess.
Yeah, then he's fucking living his life.
Yeah. I wish I could.
He's not making that hockey movie he said he was going to make like 10 years ago. Like, that's whatever. Like,
he's not making.
He had some good movies.
He's not making the third of the movies that's supposed to be Tusk and Yoga Hosers, and there's supposed to be a third one
with Johnny Depp,
so.
Everyone's favorite nowadays.
Everyone's favorite Grindelwald. Yeah. I watched a movie. I watched the most recent Pirates of the Caribbean the other day.
I didn't know they made another one.
Well, I mean, it's not that recent at this point, but it's the most recent of the five.
I think
five.
I don't remember how many of them that I've actually seen. I think I've seen 3 of them, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Well, there were the original sort of trilogy. Well, there was the original one, and then they made 2 sequels, and that was supposed to kind of be a trilogy. They came back a couple years later and made On Stranger Tides, which was not. I mean, it was a Pirates of the Caribbean movie, but basically they had optioned this book that had nothing to do with Pirates of the Caribbean called On Stranger Tides, and then they just decided, well, we already have a pirate franchise. Let's just throw Johnny Depp in here.
Yeah, we'll put Luffy in it too.
Can I, you know what? I'm gonna maybe go with a pirate franchise. I want to write about pirates. As a matter of fact, that's
read One Piece so you don't
rip it off unintentionally.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to write about a lady who suddenly has boobs falling out of her bikini as part of my pirate story.
I mean, that doesn't happen until about like chapter 600 or so.
How many chapters are there?
This week it'll be 945.
And chapters are? Is it weekly?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, there's going to be a break next week, but like it's almost every week.
And chapters are how long?
In between 15 and 20 pages usually.
Okay. I would love to do that. I got to tell you, you're talking about Kevin Smith and living his life. I'm sitting here and I'm doing these prose books, right? And I'm doing illustrations for the prose books. But I grew up wanting to do comics, and there's part of me that's just like, you know what?
Yeah, but you don't want to do like a chapter a week. That would be like the.
I don't necessarily want to do a chapter a week, but like even a book a month or something. I don't know. I just that form, and maybe it's just the grass is always greener
on somebody else's lake.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's just like I get sick sometimes of feeling like a lesser than in the book or literary community. And I talk about this a lot with people that I know. You know, the music community, comics, these are all places where doing things independently, film, these are places where doing things independently is accepted and sometimes almost valued. But doing things independently as a book writer, a writer of prose is, I don't know that it will ever not be frowned upon. Just the serious establishment looks down on people who publish their books independently, and I'm just sick of it. I would love to go into a field where I would be accepted. I see tons of former students of mine who do comics. They may not make a lot of money, but they're enjoying themselves. To go back to your point about Kevin Smith,
right?
And I'm having all this fun with the 3D programs and Photoshop that I'm doing. I would just love to write a comic again. So maybe eventually I'll just give up on the prose stuff.
Well, I mean, you could write a comic and find somebody that would want to draw it for you.
Yeah, I like making the pictures.
Yeah, but you could collaborate and be together. Like, you know, we do this once a week. Like, if you wanted to maybe do a one shot, like just be like, I wrote this like short story. We should just turn it into a one shot. Like former student or such and such.
I'm all for collaboration, but like as a primary thing, I like making my own thing.
Yeah, but you know, when you collaborate, Chris, you connect.
I guess. You also have to trust the other person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard.
Why do you not trust people?
Well,
is this another therapy? We're back in the corner with Chris and his therapy. Gonna talk about why he doesn't trust people.
I think it's very hard to find somebody who shares the same vision as you for a project. I think the fact that we've done 239 episodes of this show
in a row,
and that dwarfs any other podcast that I've ever done, even podcasts I've done with really good friends, just says to me that like there's an art to finding good collaborators, and I'm not that good at it. Like, not that sounds bad, because the other people, do you know what I'm saying?
No.
Like, okay. I'm saying that if I were to go out and find try to find an artist, I have to go out and try to find somebody whose style matches what I see in my head. And generally speaking, finding that person amongst the people I know has proven to be very difficult. So I do look at other people, former students, friends, and I look at their work and
it's like, how
okay,
can I make money off of these people?
No, that's what I look at is what could I do that would meet their aesthetic, right? I don't know. I can't quite figure it out. But I would love to work with them, and if I can figure it out, I will get in touch with them.
Just like get together with the former student, like with the story you have, like, you know, you're not super married to an aesthetic with, and then just be like, all right, cool. Could you draw their dick a little bit bigger?
I don't know that I want. That's the other thing is, so I have been working on a comic idea, and it's more kid friendly. Because my sister-in-law...
So definitely large dicks.
my sister-in-law, my wife, my kids, my nephew, they all like love that I'm a writer, but the kids can't read anything that I've written. So if I do a comic, at least the first one that I do, I will probably do something that my kids can read. So no dicks, big or small.
What if someone's named Richard?
That's a good question. I don't know. Have you ever read a character or seen a character in a movie that named Dick who was worth reading or watching?
Yes. I can't think of it off the top of my head.
You're bullshitting.
But I'm sure that someone was in some sort of media named Dick.
Well, Dick Tracy.
Yes.
Not a good movie.
I mean, it was a comic series long before...
Comic strip.
Yeah. It was a comic strip long before that.
Not a comic book. Just
it was a cartoon series as well. I remember it being, I think, on Nickelodeon or something like that.
Yeah. Dick Grayson, also known as Robin, also known as Nightwing. I guess you could make the case he's...
The Nightwing is the right wing. Took us the whole fucking show.
How much do you know about Batman and his various Robins?
Not much.
That was one of those weird things I remember when I was getting into comics. Seriously, there was a third Robin, and I was very
well. It needed to be a young Ward. So if he grew up, then obviously
right. But I was sitting there and go, my exposure to Batman, aside from
his large dick.
No, that was his exposure.
Okay.
No. So I knew Batman, as I'm sure a lot of people our age did, from first the TV show, which was on in reruns, but was on, I don't know, it was on
like TNT or TBS or something like that.
It was on all the time. And then there was the
Quick, Robin, pass me the bat shark repellent spray.
Then there was the 1989 Batman movie, which I was familiar with.
Which was a good movie.
And I think maybe before I got into comics, there was Batman Returns.
What about Batman the Animated Series?
When was that on?
91 is my guess.
So that's right around the time. So I did watch that, but I started picking up comics at Page's drugstore, which was near the Purity Supreme,
and close to where Zesty's Pizzas used to be.
Yeah.
Before they tore it down to build a CVS,
big CVS,
so they could close the other CVS that was not a mile away.
Yes. And so Batman.
But Pages turned into that CVS.
Yes, it did.
That second CVS, but like, there was the other one that was close to the Papagenos.
Yeah.
We're getting really Chelmsford local for you.
You know that I eventually worked for Dr. Page of Pages.
Doing what?
His I don't want to forget about whatever I was talking. Oh, Robin.
Yeah.
Hold on. So Robin, just very quickly, when I finally got into it around 91, 92, there was a third Robin, and I had to, without the benefit of Wikipedia or any of that, figure out who the middle Robin was, because I knew Dick Grayson from the TV show, and suddenly there's Tim Drake, but there's this other Robin in the middle who I would later realize I had heard about, because there was a vote to kill him off. They used a 900 number. Talk about not getting local for you, but getting old for you.
Yeah. Do they still have 900 numbers?
I don't know.
You're going to have to go and buy a porno magazine to see if there's 900 numbers in the back of it.
That middle Robin, DC had allowed fans to vote. And so fans could call in, I think maybe there were 2 900 numbers or something, and the fans overwhelmingly voted for the Joker to beat the shit and life out of that middle Robin. So I had to find out all of that through sort of back channels, not at Page's drugstore, which brings us back
to Dr. Page.
Dr. Page. So after he closed his drugstore, he sold it off to CVS. He had some money. I don't know if it was just from the drugstore or from other stuff, and he was the founder of a healthcare website that was to be called Channel Health. Now, Channel Health was my very first job out of college, summer, fall of 1999, and I was their webmaster, their web ninja. Yes, and so he was funding it, and so I was his employee. And among the many things among the not many things that I remember from that job, and I apologize if you've heard this anecdote before, were the pictures. So when they were putting together what the visual look of the site would be. Now, Channel Health was essentially going to be what WebMD is today.
Yeah, it was just like pictures of dicks and genital warts on them.
Not quite, but close. No. So the idea being, and this was, I don't know that they'd worked out any of this. The eventual idea being that there would be an e-commerce angle of like, okay, so here's what you have, and here's what you can buy to take care of what you have, right? But each section of the website was to have a specific sort of backdrop against which the products were shot. And so Men's Health, the backdrop was
Viagra.
No, the backdrop. The backdrop was a bowl of cereal and a folded up newspaper and maybe a cup of coffee or a glass of orange
and some
juice.
Slippers and a dog and a rifle.
No, and against that backdrop, any product related to Men's Health would go. And so I think I still have saved somewhere on a computer somewhere an image of a box of lifestyle condoms sitting in front of a bowl of cereal. And that they thought that,
you know what, that's a good way to take your lunch to work. You dump the milk and the cereal into the condom, you tie it off, and then you get to work. You cut it open and then you dump it into a bowl, and then there you go, you have your cereal mush condom flavored.
And they thought that was going to succeed. It did succeed insofar as they got bought out by a healthcare software company called IDX, who brought us into Boston, into their building across the street from the Pru, and then proceeded to lay one of us off each month until we were all gone. So I don't know what they got out of the deal, but
they got the company. They got to not have that exist anymore.
They got the box of condoms in this cereal.
Yeah. What kind of cereal?
You can find the show notes for this episode at clarkwoods.com/hot/239. And if you have anything to say to us about anything we've said, you can send us an email. That email address, Steve, is
hot@clarkwoods.com.
All right. There we go. Took us, like you said, all episode to finally get me chuckling hard enough for it to be a title. But you know, that's sometimes the way that it goes, and sometimes I just keep babbling until you cut me off with something funnier than my babble, and sometimes you just sit there and don't say anything at all until I've fully hung myself and I hit stop.
Yes.